So we have online Julie McKenzie. I thought we had Jeff. Jeff on there?
He's on there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. And Jeff Hans as the alternate for Scott Kendall, Sanders, and myself. So we have a quorum. Approval of the agenda.
Motion. Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of approving the agenda as it stands?
All right.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. We have recognizing new appointments. So there are 2 new appointments to the Ludlow Mount Holly board. I believe Caitlin Benson, who is with us online, I don't believe the other one is, and Katie Lazowski, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Klitschkowski.
How is it?
Klitschkowski.
Oh, I wouldn't have gotten that. Okay. And we were just having discussion about who is going to be the new appointee for the TRSU to replace Dave Venter. So I don't know if there's been discussion among.
We haven't met since they've been officially onboarded, so I would expect we'll do that next week.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, and then we're going to move into approval of minutes. I'm going to abstain from anything because I was barely here for that meeting. So is there any changes?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of approving the minutes from November 7th?
Aye.
All right.
Opposes, so the minutes are approved. We're going to go into our first public communication, so public comments, if there is anyone that. Is anyone online? Okay. All right, superintendent's report.
Oh, I get to bore you for a while here. Ludlow Mount Holly side, at the last meeting, like all the boards right now, we provided a budget overview and presentation. One of the key points for discussion at that meeting was the work that needs to be done. 2 roofs, LED lighting, Americans with Disability Act compliance, and replacement of windows on one wing of Ludlow Elementary. And one of the things that we were talking about was the idea that, you know, if we go forward with this about $2 million project, should we try to go out to bond with it, or should we try to put it into the budget so that it's a one-shot time hit on the taxpayers? And a lot of that's going to be dependent upon Cheryl to help us make that decision if it'll push us over the excess spending threshold. Now that we finally got the information from the state government on December 2nd, which was supposed to be the 1st. The other part of the discussion that happened a little bit was the idea about single grade versus multi-grade in terms of equalization between the 2 schools. They did approve 3 policies, the same ones that were discussed here: the wellness policy, electronic communications, and emergency preparedness. They did appoint the 2 new members that Adrian just introduced to the community. And Kelly agreed to prepare the annual report for the Ludlow Mount Holly School District. On the Green Mountain side, we didn't have a lot that big that went on that time, but being facetious, same thing. We had a budget overview. There was a lot of hearty congratulations to the boys soccer team for winning the state championships. We are in the position to talk a little bit more about the curriculum transition. Our curriculum director has taken over the principalship at Cavendish. That was Emma Vistola. Green Mountain also voted to approve the same 3 policies. And then we had a full discussion of the restructuring proposal that was put out there. The board did vote to remove the idea of having Baltimore students attend Cavendish. And this month is open for folks to kind of think and consider about the remaining proposals. which is construction at Cavendish and the creation of the Green Mountain Union School District preschool at Cavendish Elementary.
Construction at Chester and.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's the end of the day with a couple ones, so I apologize. The PICUS report, there was a question, I don't remember about, did it mention teacher evaluation? I did go back and do a full scan, because that's why I had that funny look on my face. It's like, I read the whole, and I don't remember that. No, it was really focused on kind of establishing like personnel levels, space levels, facilities that are good for kids. It was its primary focus. It was all about budget, which is good. But no, it seems like it should have, because some of the parts and pieces of it were also about if you put in this type of a program or if you do this, you should see this amount of cost savings down the line. In terms of work in the district, we spent a little bit of time with the admin council going over emergency planning, the options-based drills about a month ago when they're rolling those out to the students and the teachers in their buildings. We're also in the budget, we're going to be adding training for next year. You're going to see that for $2,500 to either do the ALICE training or the optional drill training. There's two different groups out there that can do it. It's about the equivalent of each other. We had developed a new teacher evaluation tool that's piloted this year. It's going to be piloted at Cavendish, and it's great that Emma's there because she can help us do that work. And we've started work on an evaluation tool for the paraprofessionals. And the reason being is, and the priority of this is because they work most closely with the students. And we're trying to make sure that our evaluation systems are supporting the goals. They're getting everybody kind of directed in the same direction and working on the same thing so we can achieve the goals for the district. We have talked a lot about making sure that the staff have the necessary time to be able to do the work. And so we've had some discussions about the calendar coming up this year about possibly trying to work in some half days for next year to be able to get that work done with the staff. And one of the things that'll be up and coming probably after the holidays is having the principals really take a look at the instructional time. How much time are the students actually spending with the teachers over the course of a day, a week, a year? Because the research is pretty clear that the amount of time that the students spend with the teacher is really indicative of what their performance is going to be. So those are the big things. Personnel-wise, we've already talked a little bit about Emma taking over Cavendish. As the principal, Kelly English is going to be taking over the after-school program. And Kelly has been wonderful. I actually hate to lose her, but we did not have a lot of applicants for that position that was left open. And so we kind of sat down as a little team that was doing the interviews and things and said, you know what, she's got the skill set. So we went out and asked her, and she spent a little bit of time thinking about it as accepted the position. Negotiations update, the parties did meet last night. It actually was a little bit long, but it was a good session. They established ground rules, and they established the next meeting dates. The next one will be January 7th. So that's the biggest parts and pieces.
In regards, are you talking about half days for PD for the entire district?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And so what's typical, usually at the elementary level, is they're either two or it's weekly in other districts for the teams to be able to get together. They don't tend to have as much free time during the day as you do at the high school level. Typically at high school level, it's once a month. What we're going to look for probably is once a month next year. And we'll talk with folks about that. We got to wait until the technical centers start to develop the calendar because our calendar depends upon theirs.
So are these in addition to service days?
In addition to, yeah, because the other ones are set the way they are by the contract with the CPA.
So in addition to, and this would just be for the elementary schools, or this would be for everybody?
It should be for everybody,
Okay.
especially when we're thinking about where the testing data is sitting right now. And it's not necessarily meant to be permanent. if we can get the work done over the course of 2-3 years that we need to, and things are moving in the direction that we need, then we could pull it back.
And then with Kelly, when will Kelly English's transition happen?
December 16th. We have posted the position. There are 2 or 3 folks that have applied. And then on the curriculum side, we have 2 folks that applied that are eminently qualified, and a couple others that have called in just to talk about what it means to be, interim to the end of the year. Yeah, for the curriculum directorship. And the team got together. We spent probably an hour and a half or so today developing the interview plan to make sure that we're getting somebody who's going to be a right fit. The principals are starting to reach out today to some of the teacher leaders to get them involved on the interview committee.
All right, and this is
Julie
for-
has her hand.
Sorry about that.
and this is for an interim replacement for Emma, 'cause the way it is structured.
Yeah, it's structured so that if she's not happy or we're not happy in terms of the principalship, she can go back to her original position.
Julie?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the PD thing. So my memory is 2 years ago, I believe, Lauren and the union spent a good deal of time negotiating a new professional development schedule. And my understanding is that it failed at the ratification stage. So, and so it was never implemented. So are you talking about essentially like reopening that issue and trying to solve that, whatever the issue was?
Well, I mean, can I just,
I was going to say something too, but go ahead. You're probably going to say what I'm going to say.
what I'm hearing Lane say is the proposal is to move forward with just additional half-days. The issue of the activity that you're remembering, Julie, that the union pushed back on is the committee had proposed a mix of some half-days and some extended day, and the union didn't like this extended day.
Yeah.
And so if the extended day is not part of it, it's part of the calendar.
And I don't mean to say this in a way that means that I would do this without, their approval, but in terms of half days, I don't need their approval.
And would you have to lengthen
The appropriate thing to do is to talk with them. Yeah, go ahead.
would you have to lengthen the number of days to capture the instructional hours? Would the school year be a few days longer to capture the missing hours in the classroom?
Yeah, no, if they're half days, as long as we've got 51% of the students here for half the day, that counts as a student learning day.
Okay.
So that's the reason to do the half days, because they're not going to subtract. It's a good point that you're bringing up. They won't subtract from the student learning days.
And we would still have the full days, like every couple of months that are in the existing calendar?
Yeah, and that's because those are contractually agreed.
Okay.
Lane, I think there's some people waiting. You're texting me waiting.
Oh, Pam, yeah.
All right, is there any other questions for Lane on his report? Okay, all right, move into the TRSU Facilities Director's report.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, I have very little. The Mount Holly project, boiler project obviously is done. The vapor barrier is completed along with the new floor in the boiler room, or the patch in the floor of the boiler room. And we've had a little bit of movement on the PFAS. Not much, but a little bit of movement. That seems to be moving 2 steps forward, 1 back, which is okay with us, as we're not in a bad place with PFAS with our bottled water. Green Mountain, we're moving forward with, sounds like some more additional source testing for PCBs. The state has approved some more testing and some more indoor air quality. And last but not least, Cheryl and I met with FEMA today in the state rep. And And again, I think Cheryl and I will be in agreement that that moves 2 steps forward and 1 back. But there is movement on that, and at least it's not 1 step forward and 2 backwards. So we're moving in a good direction, and sounds like we should have some positive answers from FEMA in the near future. Nothing major to report. Your schools are in pretty good shape, but we're moving along in the winter. So unless anybody's got any questions.
Just what answers from FEMA? Like, is it?
So we have a new rep again, and then Cheryl sent in a letter today, something that they needed again to add to 2 feet of paperwork that we've already submitted, and sounds like they will have an answer on how much money we could get reimbursed for.
District or supervisory?
Just for the White House project.
Yeah, just the White
right.
House project, okay.
Yeah,
So we had to file an extension because we haven't heard from FEMA. We have submitted our project, but we have not heard back from them. I guess they're gonna send us back an offer letter, and then we kind of can negotiate. And so we're waiting to hear back from them, but because we haven't heard back from them, there's a January 14th deadline date, and so we've asked for an extension on that. The other part of the good news part of that is that we are in a 90% reimbursement. We were at 75, but because of the volume of damage that was done in that event, they raised it to a 90% reimbursement.
and I can say that just at the state level, I talk to the people that I speak to at the state level, when it either PCBs or FEMA, Green Mountain School District or TRSU is at the top of the list on both levels. Like when they're talking about reimbursements or funding, we're the number 1 conversation.
We don't hear from them. We're
We don't hear from them, but they're well aware.
Question for you, Todd.
Yep.
You said the state had approved the next steps for the,
Indoor air quality and source
yes.
testing.
Do we have a letter from the state? 'Cause I-
We will. That Cassie, the DEC just emailed today, so we will be getting a letter.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll look for it.
Any questions for Todd? Okay. Great, so now we'll move into curriculum director's report. No big praise one.
So it's the biggest thing is that we have posted for the position. We kind of talked a little bit about this already. We do have applicants, and we're getting the team together. We kind of did develop the interview questions today to make sure that we're getting a good match. The goal is going to be to have this whole process wrapped up before we leave for the December holiday. Assuming we find the right candidate, we want to make sure it's a good fit.
Will there be reports? I'm assuming Emma will still, that was kind of the discussion, still be kind of helping us.
Yep.
So she'll be able to report for the following month?
At this point in time, it's going to be handed over to me or to the new person that comes on. What we did with Julie's help, which was amazing, and Emma's help, is we took all the different roles and parts and pieces that she was involved in. She had quite a bit that was going. It was very impressive. And for the interim, we attached a person to who's the most knowledgeable to say, this is who you go to if you got questions in the interim. So they've got a resource within the district to turn to that can help them on the next steps.
Okay, so Emma will not be presenting moving forward at all. Okay, so in January, it'll either be you or her replacement?
Yeah.
Okay, any questions about that? Right, moving on to financial update.
Okay, November is in the folder, as well as a little narrative. One of the things that you'll see in the central office is a negative in the tech support line, because I had initially set the data manager up as tech support, but after working with him and realizing what his job is really going to be, it's really for a district-wide and not for just the kids in the district, which is how I define it. So I did a funding adjustment and I moved him, and I've moved it in this budget. And that's why you see some discrepancies. As Julie was saying, why is that a negative? It's because I moved around. So you'll see that in the budget as well. Extended year, and while there's some lines that are over budget, the net amount does not exceed what we did budget for that. Two items that we did not budget was a paraeducator for out-of-district student that we need to place, but it is in 26, as well as some summer tuition for some students placed out of district. And again, we budgeted it for 26. Any questions? Okay.
Any questions?
What was that second item? The out of district para and what?
Summer tuition. Get into the budget.
So same presentation, same slides with some adjustments. There's a couple of additions from the discussion that we had last time. And part of that is that we're starting to get some information flowing in about the changeover at the federal government level and what that might do in terms of grants that are coming into the district. So as we had kind of talked about last time, the current financial landscape across the state is that, people are highly aware of their taxes. They're highly aware of school budgets because of the historic increase that we had. And the December 1st letter, which came out on December 2nd, kind of downgraded things a little bit. They were originally saying there was going to be at least a 7% increase across the board. They're calculating that it'll be a 5.9% increase on average for next year. And then the piece with the federal administration that is about to come in is that the U.S. Department of Education is not funded right now. Typically, they meet before Thanksgiving and they evaluate and then provide the funding, vote in the funding by Thanksgiving. The current groups in Washington have stalled that process to make sure that those decisions are not made until after the new administration is on board. And one of the important things for folks to recognize is that the federal funding at a minimum is usually about 10% of a school district's budget. If you have a lot of students that are in categories where they are disadvantaged, that percentage may be higher because a lot of that funding is to help disadvantaged children. So the specifics on this, and these are the changes that were proposed by the U.S. House before things stalled, is to reduce Title I by 25%. Title I is probably the biggest chunk of money that we get, and that is used for direct services to students. They talked about eliminating Title II funding. Title II funding is the funding that we get for professional development for staff. They are going to eliminate Title III funding. Title III funding is anything that has to do with early language learners. So that'll be completely removed from the budget. Yeah, we don't use it. We don't have a lot of students in that category. They're going to be level funding the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education grant that's out there. They're going to eliminate all additional ELL funding. They're going to eliminate all funding for any social emotional learning programs. And their plan is also to do a reduction in the mental health services grant of 70%. And so when that would take effect, when those impacts could happen, could be this coming year. And the question is how will districts across the country kind of recover from that, if at all? So questions on?
If the federal funding is reduced substantially or is eliminated, does that release or relieve some of the the laws or the rules that we have to follow if we're not being funded federally? Then, and that's usually kind of the thing that's held over your head. If you don't do it, shouldn't get federal funding.
Yeah.
So if we're not going to be getting federal funding for things with that, then.
Yeah, so the ones where they potentially eliminate, I believe that would be correct. I can confirm with Pietro,
Okay.
But a lot of them are reductions, right? Reduce Title I by 25%. So we're still going to be bound by the rules that go along with that.
So like Title I, the IDEA, but the ones that are eliminated,
Yeah.
we would no longer be under those.
That's actually a good point. Potentially, yes, that is the case. It was kind of funny. I think it was Texas when they put in the requirements that all states do their own testing for accountability purposes. Texas said, we're not going to do it because we don't need the federal money. So they didn't at the time. So yeah, sometimes it's a choice that districts make too. And so the ones in red are things that changed. If they're in parentheses, it means it went down a little bit from last time. And Cheryl will have more of the details. So there was a decrease in what we were projecting for benefits for next year, the increase in benefits for next year. Estimated salary increases, that actually went up because, right, we're in negotiations. And when we had the discussion with Chris Leopold, the district council, he said, you know, kind of what we had originally put aside was probably a little bit low. So this is to get things up where, you know, reasonably things may land in negotiations so that we have the money available. We're adding 2,500. That's for the ALICE training to make sure that we're prepared for emergency situations. And then there was $500 that was added for in-service supplies. So, there's some stuff I didn't put on there, but
Well,
yeah.
no, I'm just trying to figure out why those are.
I was confused by that. So that's not a reduction, that's an addition.
That's an addition. Yeah,
Okay.
you're right. Yep. Slide that down.
Did I get it to?
I should have done it in different colors, which is what I was thinking about. Transportation, no change. And then we'll get to special education. So this is actually a pretty impressive one in terms of the work that Cheryl and Mary did. So on the left side are the things that we talked about at the last meeting, right? So there was a change in terms of the salaries that we're anticipating because of the negotiation increase. There's some money that we're going to have to pay to repair the assistive technology that the students use, you know, like the text-to-speech machines, things like that. And one of the things that Mary looked at was we have all these students that are going to outplacements that are incredibly expensive. And so given the impact that we were going to see next year with additional students going to outplacement, she decided to create 2 new programs in district that would serve the needs of 2 types of students. And putting that into place, there's some cost to it, which are the 2 bullets up top. So you got the $360,000 for the new staff and their benefits and the $10,000 for the startup. But because of that, you're going to see the reductions in the bottom 3 bullets down, right? Because we're not paying tuition to send them out. We get to recoup that money. We also don't have to provide transportation to send them out of the district. We recoup that money. And then we also don't have to provide additional services, you know, while they're in outplacement. So you're looking at an overall reduction due to the installation of those programs of just about $500,000.
Can you say any more about what kinds of students or that would serve or what the programs are?
Yeah, Mary, you online? I see you there. Can you hear?
I can hear you. One of the programs will be a life skills program, which we will call Learning for Success. And the other one is to serve the students with some emotional behavioral challenges called Bridges. And this will eliminate having to send so many children out of district, and will also be able to educate them in their homeschool community and help them with transitioning to adult services too.
There was some pretty robust discussion about creating these before, and there was, like last year when we were talking about the budget, and I don't recall why, but I think Lauren had said there was reasons why we couldn't do it in our district.
I think we did talk about it. I think we talked about space and, you know, but I think we're to a point that we have to overcome some of those challenges that would.
So this is just make it happen, kind of thing. Oh, okay.
Yeah, if we've got the right staff with the right certifications, I mean, that'll be the trick. There shouldn't be a problem. The other potential benefit, depending upon how many students we have that'll go into that program, is we might be able to tuition in students from other districts and generate a little revenue from them as well.
And Pam O'Neill was a great help in helping us do some planning, and she'll continue to help us plan. And we'll have some people working throughout the year and in the summer setting up the programs.
would this reduction of almost $500,000 be like realized in the first year, or is this predicted over X amount of time, or?
So you realize it this year, but it will continue. You won't continue to see the reduction. That will stay down as long as we keep.
So it's money we don't have, after this year, it's money we don't have. So it's kind of hidden, you won't see it, but we're not spending.
So this is the good part, the part that, I won't say it's not so good, but it's not as positive of an impact, is that a lot of these students fall under the extraordinary costs, and we get a higher reimbursement from the state and federal government for that. And so that revenue comes out of extraordinary and not operating. So there's not a reduction to the school.
Okay. And of course, depending on the federal government does, that may disappear.
We used to be able to build the budgets on confidence.
Yeah.
It's not as stable as it used to be.
So the big one here is our table on the right. So you see the last draft, right, central office, you were looking at a 7.64% increase. On this current draft, it's a 7.4. Transportation stayed the same. Special education was cut more than in half. And then the total change in the TRSU budget went from 14 to 9% in terms of increase. That's it, unless there's questions.
Anyone have any?
I have a question.
Jack, go ahead.
Back one of the first few slides, Lane, one of the bullet points was we may get more money for disadvantaged students. Does that deal with intellect or finance, or what does that mean?
So in terms of what they're cutting, let me see if I can find it. So disadvantaged students are, from poverty. You're an English language learner, so it's a little harder for you to compete on common ground with the general population. It could be students with disabilities, which are our IEP students. So it's a whole gamut of things. It's basically, the things that came in the weighting study that the state is providing supposedly extra funding for. Yeah, those are students with that would be considered disadvantaged. So it's a whole gamut of possibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I have a question.
Okay.
But so if I'm understanding you, we are potentially losing. We don't know, but we're potentially losing some of the funding that you've outlined on that slide. Have you accounted for that in the final slide you showed us about the increases?
No, it's not realized yet. This is what we're hearing. The Superintendent's Association coming out of Washington. This is what we're hearing. So this is a potential.
Have you gamed out what the hit would be to the TRSU budget if we lost some of these supports?
Not yet. I can do that easily enough. I'm happy to send that around tomorrow if folks would like. Yeah, that's a quick one. It's a good question, Julie.
Any other questions for Lane on the proposed budget? Okay. All right, we'll move into old business. This is to discuss moving forward with a vote on policy governance. We've kind of kicked the ball down the road numerous times. Where does the board stand on adopting policy governance? Mainly so that we have, an evaluation tool for our superintendent, and then, we can begin working for creating the kind of the guardrail policies. Anybody, and we've all had opportunity for education. I don't know who you were at the meeting, Julie. And Julie, were you able to do any of the education?
Are you, Maria, my memory is Maria attended the all-day meeting recently, or maybe not recently.
Shared with you guys. Nothing.
I-
Okay.
Ludlow Mount Holly hasn't progressed in terms of its thinking about that model. I don't recall that coming up at the last meeting. I don't think any of my colleagues are here.
We're talking about more for the TRSU level, adopting policy governance. The districts themselves, we had conversation 2 meetings ago, right? 2 meetings ago, because I wasn't here the last one, about, you know, the individual districts making decisions, but at the TRSU level, again, for kind of the purpose of having the evaluation tool, and the development of the policies. Does anybody have any thoughts on moving forward? Delaying it further?
Yeah, so I guess my only thought is still that clarification between what policy governance for TRSU would mean and policy governance for the districts would mean, especially in terms of the superintendent evaluation. So if it's TRSU only, my understanding is that there the goals are what TRSU is providing for the districts, that those are the ends. And so in that case, all TRSU would be evaluating on would be, is the union providing what it should to the districts and not anything directly about the kids and families. And so if TRSU is the only board that has passed policy governance, do we then also need additional evaluation at the district level to, given that what we're all mostly really caring about are those kids and families and education?
I mean, evaluation of planning.
Yeah.
So this is the only board that evaluates.
So then I think this board would need some additional evaluation beyond what is in the policy governance, because the policy governance for TRSU would only be the goals that the union is having for providing for the districts.
But what you could do is you would change your ends, you would add additional ends to cover those parts and pieces that the other districts could be concerned about. So your mission, you know, trying to increase achievement in English in third grade, you know, that's an end. But you could also, as this is why they call it policy governance, you also develop another ends policy. Let's say that Ludlow Mount Holly is concerned about the superintendent, you know, working to provide appropriate resources to their, or equitable resources to the two schools over there, that you would create an end that said that. And that would go in as part of the things that would be evaluated on.
Yeah, I guess where I'm getting stuck is that unless Green Mountain or Ludlow Mount Holly has the ends set as, you know, showing improvement in education in the students or improved performance. My understanding is that with TRSU, all of our ends would be the things that are in the TRSU budget and would therefore be, are you doing a good job of directing the special education and how those funds are going, and transportation and central office organization, that the TRSU ends would not include things like, are we getting improved math scores in our schools? Because those are under the district.
I see what you're saying, but the two districts are apart, right? They are, you exist to be the representatives of those two districts to this board to make sure that they are getting what they need from the organization. So you could have ends probably that are separate, you know. These are things that we want Lane to achieve on behalf of Green Mountain Union. And these are things that are a little bit different that we want Lane to achieve on behalf of Ludlow Mount Holly. And so you could have ends that are a little bit more specific.
So I guess what I'm questioning is the TRSU board's ability to say Green Mountain's ends are X, Y, and Z, if the Green Mountain Board hasn't adopted policy governance and created their own ends.
But they could be called in during the policy development piece, right? You're gonna have
Mhm.
representatives there to be able to add those thoughts and parts and pieces, so that the TRSU board could implement them as the ends.
Yeah, just in the training and in the follow-up questions and responses, my understanding was that it's the Green Mountain, it's the school district boards that would be doing the direct education goals, since they're the units that are providing that direct education. And so, given that we would want to evaluate you on things like evaluating the teachers and performance of the students and things like that, do we, as the TRSU board, have the power to set those ends for the Green Mountain and the Ludlow Holly board? If they're saying, no, we're not even doing policy governance, or
Yeah, because you are in charge of oversight in a broad aspect in terms of the two districts. I'm trying to think of a specific example here. It's kind of like categories of ends. This category this applies to all three. This applies just to Ludlow Mount Holly. This applies to just Green Mountain. And so the ends could probably be put out into three different categories. This is all districts. This is,
but Green Mountain would still need to
have input.
approve even the ends that were for Green Mountain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm asking is, until or unless the districts approve those ends or create those ends, how does TRSU evaluate you on meeting those if TRSU can't tell you this is what the ends are?
Well, that they would have to be a part of having those discussions to develop what their ends are, right? That might be separate from TRSU. And that's something they should be doing anyway, because without them, regardless of whether it's policy governance or not, I don't know what you want from me.
Right.
You know, I'm going to do what the state requires, and I'm going to do what's appropriate in terms of education. But if there are specific things above and beyond that, that needs to be communicated. So that should be happening regardless of whether policy governance is there. But hopefully I'm making a little bit of sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm almost wondering if you could just articulate what your concern is instead of like, how can we just, it sounds like there's a concern on the Green Mountain Board. Like, and what I've kind of heard in some feedback is like people are worried about loss of control, or, you know, the school board not having the ability to, you know, have more input, more around that micromanagement level, whether that's the concern you're articulating or trying to discuss. I'm not sure. I'm having a hard time following that, but maybe articulating what the actual, the foundational concern is here.
Yeah, my concern is that.
Can I move this table back? This is
sorry. My concern is that my understanding of the supervisory union is that it is only setting the ends for the union, which is the combination of the two districts. And that the union isn't actually charged with the direct setting ends that are related to teachers and education and students, since those are in the districts.
I don't know if it's just the ends related to the union.
So I see if
There's operational ends, there's financial ends.
But I think I kind of get what you're saying is that, like, in terms of the TRSU, right, you're responsible for transportation for both districts, you're responsible for special ed. And so if I've got this right, the question is, if that's the case, then is it true that the TRSU can only create ends about those things?
Yes, and my understanding was the answer, I'm forgetting her name, but the person who Jean, my understanding, the answer from her is that is correct. That the supervisory union has ends that are about what they are providing for the school districts, and only the school districts have ends about teachers and students.
And but her comment that, and I hopefully I'm getting it right. It was when the question was asked, she also said, but the TRSU is responsible for those pieces, but the other districts have input. So I took that to mean that when you develop what's important for your district, you tell TRSU, they put it in the ends document as part of the evaluation, and then it's the TRSU district that uses that as a tool to evaluate me. Because there's folks from representatives from each board there to be able to have input into that.
Okay, so
And I'm interpreting.
Yeah. So if one or both of the school district boards did not vote to have policy governance, TRSU would be saying, okay, but we have.
We still need to know
And
what you
so
want.
we still want to know what these ends should be and if you agree with these ends that we're setting, or the way we are describing
Yeah,
these ends.
yeah, you still have full participation and to be able to say, this is what we need for our district.
Okay,
And then that would be put into the document as an end.
so if a district did adopt, they could create their own ends, hand it to us and say, okay, here are our ends. And we would just be kind of accepting that. But if they don't, we would be asking them, well, what do you want anyway? And then we would be creating those ends?
Yeah.
Okay,
So what's important to your district? And technically, for the most part, what the evaluation tool is, it's whatever we agree upon.
Okay.
So to make life simpler. Yeah. So good questions.
Yeah.
I think it's making a little bit more sense. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Does anybody else have any discussion or questions about policy governance as it stands for the TRSU level? No? Okay. We do have a quorum, so we are able to vote. Do you want to take a vote about adopting policy governance at the TRSU level?
I think we should.
I think I need to speak with my colleagues in next week in our meeting to make sure that they want to approve that.
At the TRSU level? Not talking about at the Mount Holly level. So this would be you and whoever, I guess, comes in.
Yeah, I think I need some direction from them about what our position is on this.
Okay. All right. Do you mind being proactive then and having that discussion with whoever is assigned the TRSU? And if there's questions in this next month, reaching out to Lane for clarification, or Janine, we can probably connect her.
Well, what I'm imagining is that we put this on the agenda for LMH next week. Like Lane, can you add that to the LMH agenda next week, and then we can have a full board discussion about it?
I'm laughing because I was writing that down as you were saying it.
Great. And I think Maria's will be important since she most recently interacted on this issue. So I would just like to have a wash up with the LMH board before I feel like I can take a vote at TRSU.
Okay. All right. So we will postpone this vote until the January meeting.
So yeah.
I move to table.
Need a second? All right. All in favor of tabling the vote on policy governance until January?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will table the motion, or I'm sorry, we will table the vote until January. Okay, so with that, we can skip over potential policy creation dates, as they would all be before that. Okay, so new business, discussing the annual report, is that?
That was really, typically it's on there this time of year. It's deciding, who is writing it, which we kind of did. And then it's usually just a report out about where it stands. And at some point in time, it should come in front of the board for the board to approve and say, yeah, this is what we want to send out. So what's written.
Okay.
Am I making
No.
I talked really fast.
Yes.
Sorry about that. So typically what happens with the annual report is it's usually on the agendas or this time of the year for a couple of months. The first time it's to decide, who's going to do the writing or how the writing is going to get accomplished. The second time is for basically the presentation of the report to the board. And it doesn't need to be a presentation, but for them to review and say, yes, we agree with this.
Okay.
And so,
I think typically we've had just have the chairs write the report.
The districts.
For the districts.
yeah,
Yeah, I haven't.
and that's what happened at Ludlow Mount Holly is Kelly as the chair said she'd do it. So they voted to say, yeah.
Okay, is there something you need at the TRSU? Do you need an annual report for the TRSU?
I would think so.
I feel like we want to.
Yeah, so usually the write-up from the boards are about, the accomplishments. And so you have things that are under the bailiwick of the TRSU, like special education and transportation. So it might be writing about those, this is where we stand, this is kind of what we need, or, things are good, and these are some exceptional things that happen in those areas this year. Like, a good thing probably to talk about would be the plan for the programs that Mary's putting together.
Did Paul do it in the past?
Julie said she remembers seeing.
Where do you call it from?
I'm trying to find it now, but I feel like there was a page in there that talked about TRSU. Then it was the same page in both.
Each of the books.
In the elementary.
Was that
I
done
think
by
it's-
the superintendent or was it done by the board?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Superintendent does one too.
That's what I'm just wondering, the structure last year.
Yeah.
I don't.
And so part of the confusion may be just because it's been differently.
Yeah,
So-
okay.
So it should be the way that you have in the past. So I apologize for making.
No,
this
no, that's fine. I'm happy to figure it out now.
Yeah.
So Kelly, they'll do LMH. I can do GM. We just need to figure out who's doing TRSU, and we'll figure it out. And it'll either be.
And I do one anyway. Mine's typically kind of explaining the budget and why we're asking for what we're asking for.
Okay. All right. So we'll, I guess, figure out who's writing the annual report or presenting it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
If that's been what's been done in the past.
I just don't remember Paul doing one. I don't remember anything like that. So Paul being the previous. So maybe we can just figure that out. Okay.
I'll do some research actually.
And Julie, you can find it or.
So I think what I'm remembering is I'm not seeing anything from like the chair of the TRSU board, but there is like a TRSU report on the after school program, a TRSU report on curriculum. So some of the functions that happen at the TRSU level and some information on the TRSU budget, but not a page specifically from the TRSU.
So it was probably Lauren putting together something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Joy. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts on the annual reports before we move forward? Okay. Next is our second public comment section. Anybody online? I don't see any hands. Okay. Our next meeting date for the TRSU is the 2nd of January at CTES and on Zoom. And now we move into board evaluation. Board members are given and have read agenda background materials prior to the meeting. Everybody
Yes.
prepared? Yes. Board members are respectful to each other, the public and the administration.
Yes.
Board members handled conflict openly and constructively. Is there any conflict?
Yep.
Board members focus on the role and responsibility of the board.
Yes.
Yes.
Board members act as a team once a decision has been made and work collaboratively throughout decision-making.
Yes.
Right. Okay, unless there's something else or anybody has any requests for agenda items next month, we can call this meeting adjourned at 6:55 p.m. Right. A motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
All right.
All right, we're adjourned at 6:55.